In this video, we're going to look at the ablative again. We're going to look at new uses. We're going to look at the ablative of comparison and the ablative of degree or measure of difference. We're also going to be looking at the genitive of description. These topics are all covered in the Grammar for 4B on pages 214 through 15 in your text. First, let's look at the two new ablatives. Of course, you remember comparatives. Comparatives are forms like fortior, which means stronger, or pulchrior, which means more beautiful, or stultius, which means more stupidly. Two kinds of ablatives are commonly used with comparatives. The first is called the ablative of comparison. The second is called the ablative of degree or measure of difference. I call it the ablative of degree of difference. Your text calls it the ablative of measure of difference. In fact, most people call it the ablative of degree of difference, so that's what I'm going to call it. Instead of using quam to mean than, you can use the ablative. Here's an example. Let's look at this statement. Hoc oppidum est pulchrius quam illud. This is the neuter of the comparative, and it's agreeing with the neuter word oppidum, and this means pretty. So this means this town is prettier than that one. Than that town, what's implied, than that one. Well, we can do this with quam plus illud, or we can instead say hoc oppidum est pulchrius illo. This town is more beautiful than that one, and merely put the word for that here in the ablative instead of using quam. We call that an ablative of comparison. Both these mean exactly the same thing. This town is prettier than that one. This ablative of comparison comes from the true ablative, the from sense of the ablative. This literally means this town is more beautiful from that one. It is common in languages to use from to express the notion of than. So this is just an expression of that notion that you can use from to mean than in many languages, and that's what's happening here. Here's some more examples of the ablative of comparison. Haec via est longior illa. This road is longer than that one. Luna est minor sole. The moon, luna, est, is minor, smaller, sole, than the sun. The word for sun is sol, solis, masculine, and this is the ablative, and it has the sense of than here. Here's another example. Quis est te stultior? Who is stupider, stultior, te, than you? Te here is ablative, and this is an ablative of comparison, so it has the sense of than. Who is stupider than you? Now let's talk about the ablative of degree of difference. Your book, again, calls this measure of difference, but most people call it degree of difference, and that's what I'm going to be calling it. It gives some quantity that modifies a comparative. Here's an example. Marcus est multo stultior. Marcus is stupider by much. Okay, this really means Marcus is much stupider. But in Latin, when we say much stupider, we have to put the much in the ablative. What we're literally saying is Marcus is by much stupider. We can't just say much stupider and have that make any sense. You have to say by much stupider. That's the law. As a matter of fact, that used to be true in English too. Before we lost case, we had to use a special case in English to do this. When we said much stupider, it was actually not in the normal form of the word. It was put in a different form of the word in Old English. Okay, so literally, Marcus is by much more stupid. That's how you have to say Marcus is much more stupid. By the way, this is a use of the with ablative. It tells with or by what quantity Marcus is more stupid. It's related to the ablative of means, for instance. Okay, you're stupider by much. You know, that's the thing by which you're stupider, I guess. What can I say? Here's some more examples. Illud bellum fuit tribus annis longius. That war, illud bellum, fuit, was, longius, longer, tribus annis. This is the ablative of the word for 3, and this is the ablative of the word for year. So that war was longer by 3 years. In English, we would simply say, that war was 3 years longer. But you must put the expression 3 years into the ablative or it won't make sense in Latin. Here's another example. Duabus is the ablative of 2, the word for 2. Unciis is the ablative plural of the word uncia, uncii feminine, a first declension noun that means inch. So this literally means by 2 inches. It's ablative, by 2 inches. So this is, I am taller by 2 inches. In English, we would simply say, I am 2 inches taller. But you must in Latin say, I am by 2 inches taller. You must use the ablative. Here's another example. Hoc simulacrum est uno pede altior. This statue is altior, taller, uno pede, by 1 foot. Again, an ablative expression. This means this statue is by 1 foot taller. We would simply say in English, this statue is 1 foot taller. Here are 2 examples where both ablatives are used with comparatives. Veres est multo peor Cicerone. Veres is by much worse from Cicero. In other words, Veres is much worse than Cicero. Multo is an ablative of degree of difference. Cicerone is an ablative of comparison with the sense of than. Here's another one. Ea itis. That temple, ea itis, remember the word itis in the singular means temple. That temple est is multis annis. This is ablative by many years, antiquior, older, phano, than the shrine. You may remember the word for shrine is phanum, phani, neuter, and this is the ablative of that word. So this is literally, that temple is by many years older from the shrine. We would say in English, that temple is many years older than the shrine. Well, that's that for the ablative. Let's talk a bit about the genitive of description now. Do you remember the ablative description when you said things like vir magna virtute, a man literally with great virtue, but I've been encouraging you to say a man of great virtue because that sounds better in English? It turns out that there is also a genitive of description. It can be used instead of the ablative and means the same thing. So we can say vir magna virtutis, literally a man of great virtue. Both these, vir magna virtute and vir magna virtutis, mean exactly the same thing. You can put these expressions either in the ablative or in the genitive, and it doesn't matter. By the way, as with the ablative description, there must be an adjective in the genitive of description. You could not simply say, for instance, vir virtutis, a man of virtue. You must say a man of great virtue. There always has to be an adjective. And that's that. The end. This has been a Barking Blue Heeler production.